Greetings, adventurers, and welcome to the Micflayers podcast, coming to you today from the best inn in town. I am your host, Martin, and with me, as always, is your host, Conor. How's the crack today, Conor? What's the story?
Not much, man. How are you?
I'm good. I had some fun sessions during the week. I had a week off, so nice and relaxed, and just kind of excited and looking forward to talking about what we're going to talk about today. Oh, and Van Richten's is coming out next week, so super excited.
Van Richten's is fast approaching.
Yes, mate. 13th?
It's upon us.
It's the 13th, isn't it?
14th, I thought. I could be wrong.
See, I think I'm getting mixed up. There's a bunch of really good really good stuff coming to Netflix. Stuff.
I'm really glad you brought that up because I started rewatching Castlevania.
I knew you were going to say Castlevania
in anticipation of the 4th season coming out.
It's so D&D. I love it. Oh,
it's such a good show. Even I remember the first season being kind of meh. Because it's only 4 episodes, it's only 25 minutes apiece.
Yeah.
But I totally understand that, like, they probably got the barest hint of a green light from the studio to make something like that, and they thought, okay, look, let's just do a 4-episode arc, and if we can do that, and people are even if it doesn't go anywhere and we don't get any additional seasons, people can still be like, oh, that's a nice nod to the fans, but nothing too serious, and then it actually ended up being amazing. I remember the first 4 episodes being kind of fine. I watched them again. I was like, these are fucking incredible.
Oh no, they were really good. I remember I was working nights at a time, and we could watch videos while we were watch it while we were working. So we're okay. It happened twice. The first time I got it, second time it slipped through, but we're at 1:44 when it happened, so we're all good. 90. We need to not swear for 90 seconds in your video.
Is that all?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually reminds me to start the clock on the podcast as well. I started rewatching it, really enjoying it second time around anyway. Mm-hmm. And also that I have Tara watching as well. Tara is really into it.
What is a man but a miserable pile of secrets?
We're just coming up in like mid-season 2. Carmilla has just entered the fray, and she's starting. When she first comes in, I forgot how she acts all girly girl, like, of course, my lord, and all. She's all like nice and kind of, but you can tell she's not being nice. She's being nice, but not being nice.
A smiling life.
And she, exactly. And she's just now kind of starting to pull her Cersei Lannister kind of stuff on people, where she's scheming and pushing buttons and manipulating people. She's a more tactful Cersei Lannister.
Because she's not drunk all the time. Cersei was hammered. Particularly if you read the books, there's an ongoing, really subtle gag that she's just drunk all the time, but also she's slowly getting fatter as the books go on.
That would kind of make I wouldn't expect the actress Lena Headey to commit to something like that, because that's a big ask of anyone. Yeah. But in the books that would make sense, because isn't the whole prophecy thing that the witch told her that she would kind of wither and become old and younger, a younger queen would take her place, and all this other stuff, like a younger, more beautiful queen.
Maggie the Frog, I think that was the name of the witch. Maggie the Frog.
I think that was her, yeah. But yeah, I like Cersei Lannister as a character is like, she so desperately wants to play the game, but she lacks all tact all tact whatsoever. Like, she's no tact when it comes to picking her moves or picking the people she fights. If someone crosses her, she's a terrier. If someone crosses her, it doesn't care if they're 4 times her size, she'll take them on. And it doesn't matter what the fallout of that fight is, she'll take them on. And she's actually just such an interesting character in that sense. How she's I don't know. I think Cersei thinks she's a lot smarter than she actually is, but actually she's a bit of a brute when it comes to how she handles situations. She just goes head first into the fray without really considering ramifications.
Wasn't
like,
that
one of the best?
Wasn't that there's like a quote, isn't it? From, I think it's Tyrion. He says, like, she likes to think that she's Tywin with tits, but really she's the Mad King.
More or less, yeah. And there's a brilliant bit in there's a couple times where Cersei thinks she's so smug and happy about it, and she thinks it's almost like, I'm getting my way kind of thing, but it backfires on her constantly. And there's the one time where Tywin tells Tyrion he has to marry Sansa.
Yeah.
With the biggest, smuggest smile on her face, like, you have to marry her. And Tywin's like, and you'll be marrying Loras Tyrell. Yeah. And she's like, what? And then there's the other time where she was responsible for the High Sparrow. She kind of brought him raised him up to the point of being a spiritual leader and like making him an official.
Yeah, she brought him in to mess with Marjorie Terrell.
Yeah, and then it ended up like not realizing that. Oh, but if you implement this person who's going to crack down on Marjorie because of his rules, he'll also crack down on you because of his rules. So, I mean, did you not? And then and she's so shocked when the High Sparrow is like, "You've been sinning," and she's like, "Well, yeah, but that wasn't our deal."
Oh, do you remember that gave birth to the shame meme for the next 3 years?
Yeah, that's still going. That's still going. But yeah, I forgot why I got into Cersei Lannister.
Oh, we were talking about Carmilla.
Yeah, Carmilla's a way more tactful Cersei Lannister who actually does think 2 and 3 steps ahead on the chessboard, whereas Cersei comes in for a game of chess and someone makes their move and Cersei looks at the board and slaps the entire thing off the table and goes, "You lose."
I love that. Like, I love that show. It's incredibly well written. All the character work is really, really good. But every time I think of it, all I can think of is that one fight in Dracula's castle with the 3 of them, and they like work together to take out all the vampires. And it's such a D&D party fight. It's a fighter. It's a battlemaster fighter, an eldritch knight, and a sorcerer just melting people.
Oh no, she'd be a wizard through and through. They specifically
study their spells.
Yeah. So I'd say a wizard. But even then, I mean, that's a pretty solid class. Eldritch Knight. What is it? Eldritch Knight?
I'd say he's an Eldritch Knight, because of the weapon bond.
Yeah. What about?
Trevor, I said he was a battlemaster. He's a dex-based battlemaster.
Yeah, I think there's. I can't remember the name of the guy who. Is it something the Barbarian who does all the different builds of various characters?
Oh, Tulok the Barbarian. Yeah.
He did one for Trevor. He gave him some levels into Kensai, which I thought made perfect sense, because that way he can use the whip with his monk martial arts die, and he can also he also gets like unarmed strikes, which gets more hits per turn, which Trevor does do a lot of punching and kicks as well as weapon strikes. So I felt like that was really made a lot of sense as well. I do love the fight from season 2 where Trevor is holding off all the monsters from entering the hold.
Oh, that's so good.
And he's fighting that crow thing on the platforms, and so good. Great choreography actually in that show, fight choreography.
Oh, and animation. Amazing.
Yeah.
Anyway, we should probably actually talk about what we're supposed to be talking about today.
Why not?
So today I thought we'd do a little reverse what we did last week, where you kind of interviewed me about about magic items and stuff, and I thought I'd talk to you about NPCs, because you do a lot of really fun and really interesting NPCs and have in the past, and I think, like, I don't know, from my side of the screen when I'm a player anyway, it feels like yours are very prepared, and you have certain, like, they feel very solid, whereas a lot of mine, and my party definitely know, a lot of the time if they ask me, unless I specifically have prepared 1 or 2 NPCs for this place, if they're like, oh yeah, I want to go and find someone who can make this for me, I'd be like, okay, cool, and then I like the mental Rolodex starts going, and it's like, dwarf, carpenter, his name is Oscar,
I've named so many dwarfs Oscar with a K.
Oh god.
Just being like, he's a dwarf and his name is Oscar, but it's with a K because fantasy.
That's brilliant. So
that's kind of George R. R. Martin's way of naming NPCs or characters, I suppose, is that he takes an English or like European name, and then he kind of misspells it. And then it's like that'll do.
Do you know the way the human mind, when a word is spelled the wrong way but has the same letters in the first and last letter are correct, your brain just fixes it.
You can recognize what it is.
Your brain just fixes it though. You might not even notice it, like if you read over it quickly, because your brain will just automatically fix it. I didn't realize, if you go back and read Game of Thrones, he spells Jaime's name Jaime.
He does, yeah. No, I knew that.
I didn't. I read the entire series without realizing it until I went back to write my FYP on the books, and I was like, "What the hell?"
And but I mean, like, again, like you said, I mean, I remember this is a blast in the past. I'm pretty sure I saw something like this on Bebo.
Oh my god, Bebo!
There was a thing someone copied and pasted into their. It wasn't called the timeline; it was called something else. but they copied and pasted it into their timeline. And it was obviously something that had been shared around an awful lot. But it's a long sentence, and it basically says, if you can read this,
you're very smart.
Then it's something like that. Yeah, you are very smart. Your brain is able to decipher that all of the letters in these words are mixed up, except for the first and last letters. But again, each word in this has all the middle letters jumbled. But you're able to read it because your brain recognizes enough of the letters that it can do it. It's very, very cool.
Yeah. Speaking of names, so we'll try and get back on actually on track what we're supposed to be talking about. So when you're going to like actually first like from scratch make an NPC, what's the first step you take?
The first step I take is what function do they serve?
Ooh, cool.
Like I don't make NPCs because I feel like that's how they come about. NPCs come about as an act of necessity, out of function. If a player turns to you and goes, "Hey, I want to get like a new sword made. Is there a blacksmith in town?" You go, "Yes." And because of the necessity of blacksmith, you go, "Okay, I need a blacksmith." Next thing I usually think of is, what's their occupation? Then I'll usually go with race, gender, age, kind of in no particular order. After that, I just kind of come up with. I kind of just. I guess in my brain, I take a lot of different body parts and I throw them at the wall until it's like, beard, red hair, gold eye, like Maximilian Pegasus. The Maximilian Pegasus, the
Yugi boy.
But yeah, so I think out of necessity is usually where I start. I will oftentimes, if you guys are going to a new town or to a new area or something like that, I will make sure that like maybe 4 or 5 key, depending how big the town is, 4 or 5 key figures, I have their entire character written out. And by entire character, I have a spreadsheet, which is it's their name, it's their name, it's where they work or what they do. So are they like and that can be like, occupation as tavern owner, proprietor of the Low End Place. That's one of the taverns in the world we're playing at the moment. So I would have Ben, the Low End Place is, but I can also have someone who's like a governor of a certain region or a king or something like that, and I will say the Silver Palace, this city, So it's both. It's where you'll find them, I guess, essentially. And they don't move because they're NPCs like the video game. They have to be there so you can find them for the quest marker floating above their head. But yeah, I'll usually do it for 4 or 5 people. Typically, it's people I think you'll interact with, and this can differ based on like what I have planned for the region. So, for example, if you arrive at a town and it's been overrun by zombies, you'll probably want to speak to the captain of the guard. I'll come up with a captain of the town watch guard. You'll probably want to speak to whoever is the local lord. Baron, Marquis, Comtesse, whatever it is. I will do a description of them. I almost always do a tavern owner. I almost always do a blacksmith, and I almost always do a general store owner as well. They're the main 3 I will do on top of actual political or what would you call it, people of authority figures.
Yeah, cool. Just a side note, I had left my League of Legends up in there, so there's going to be a weird for the first 13 minutes or so of the podcast in the background. Apologies there, listeners. That's literally just the idle noise of the League client. I should.
It's just a wind effect.
Yeah, it just sounds like wind.
As long as it's not music, we won't get pulled.
No, it's just wind. But I was so used that I didn't clock it.
I wonder will that make the podcast sound really like mystical, with a bit of like wind floating in the background,
or it just sounds like a window has been left open beside my microphone.
Oh, maybe.
It should be okay. It should be okay.
We'll check. It can go either way.
But yeah, no, that's cool. I'm kind of similar in that a lot of mine, they're basically just a function rather than a person. And then depending on how frequently the party will go back to them or use them, then I might add in a little bit more character. Do you go down the route of like character development with your NPCs eventually?
If people, depends on how people gravitate towards them. So if I put an NPC into a game, there is some I put in there with like the specific intent that I kind of leave them in, I don't know how to put it. I introduced you guys to a wizard recently named Kosh.
Yes.
Who was a wizard who was like the local court wizard of a small town named Pontier. I don't actually have any quests planned with him or anything like that, but he's like, I kind of presented him as a person of knowledge and a person of means, and he's a member of the courts as well because he's technically a knight of Redalia as well as a court wizard. So he has some clout in the overall Redalian, what would you call it, nobility, I guess, the noble courts and stuff like that. He's not high ranking by any means, but you know, he's enough that he could get an audience if he needed to with a lot of people. So for that reason, I've introduced him like that. He's a person of means. If he ever wanted to go back to him, I could expand on him pretty easily, and I've left him open as a character I'd potentially like to go back to, but I also don't, because you never know how players are going to react to certain NPCs. I purposely don't invest too much time or energy in them until players have, like, almost in whatever way they do it, confirmed to me that they really like this NPC or they want to see more of this NPC. So, because I mean, like, I introduced, I mentioned him a minute ago. Ben is a character who you guys have like spoken to frequently.
Yeah.
He is the owner and proprietor of a tavern in the old part of the city of Temurai called the Low End Place. Which, yes, I came up with. Actually, no, you technically came up with because we were playing and I hadn't written out a low-end tavern. I had a couple other places. I didn't have a low-end place. But I didn't have that. And then you guys were like, maybe we'll go somewhere a bit more,
affordable,
low class or whatever. Like, we're not looking for a fancy spot that's going to take all our money. And I was like, and I think you specifically asked me, yeah, Conor, is there like a low end kind of place in town? And I said, yes, there is, and it's called the Low End Place. But then I came up with this character, Ben, who has like a handlebar mustache and brown hair, and he's just dressed in the regular tavern keeper's clothes. He's got an apron on. He's a bit gruff looking. He's got a Cockney accent. But the thing about him as well is I made him up completely on the fly. Ben is just modeled off, and there's a name for this character, and I don't know what it is. If you look at the cover of
the Yawning
Tale to the Yawning Portal, yeah. That's the first image I thought of, and I'm just pulling the art from that. That's what he looks like, and it's definitely a name of that bartender, but I can't remember what it is. But I just pulled that, and I'm like, yeah, his name is Ben. He talks with a Cockney accent. He's a bit gruff, but he's happy to have customers and all that. But you guys have stayed there so frequently, and kind of interacted with him on more than just a level of, like, it hasn't just been, I need a room, here's 2 gold. Otto room, sleep for the night, whatever. You've asked him questions and asked him about himself, and what he does, or does he, like, I think at one point, because he runs the CD bar in town, you guys asked him, because he needs to find the source of some drug dealings that was going on in the city. You asked him where he thinks you could find drugs in the city, and he pointed you in the right direction. So he's frequently become a recurring character.
Yeah,
just kind of he's a side character for definite, but and I don't think you'll be running to him before the final battle with the big bad or anything like that to be like, Ben, we need help. Like, he's not that kind of guy, but he's become more prominent simply because you guys have chosen to interact with him more, and I've expanded on him more as a result. So I think I usually get a nice skeletal framework of a character done up, and if you guys don't gravitate towards that character, or you guys think to yourselves, that's just another innkeeper, I don't need to store that in my memory banks, then I won't extrapolate on them. I'll take a note of what their name is, and maybe a brief description of what they look like, so I'm consistent, but I'm not going to have any backstory or anything like that about them.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I do something pretty similar. Like, I think if you, like, you're bang on when you say if you invest too much time in actually, like, building out the NPC, and, like, you do a whole thing, like, oh, this person, they're from this family, like, particularly if it's not, like, a plot relevant NPC is what I call them, like, just your your tavern keeper, you're like a carpenter or a blacksmith. If it's not, you're just, I think you could better spend your time as a dungeon master, rather than doing out the whole thing. And yeah, like a good example similar that I have would be another tavern keeper. Actually, I have a tavern in my world called the Parting Glass, and it's run by a guy called Hyan. And when Hyan is he's a bit of a slacker, kind of has a bit of a stoner air about him. Right. Not really the most helpful bartender in the world, but like if you're like, "Hi, can I grab a pint glass there and pour my own drink?" You just go, "Are you gonna pay me?" And like, yeah, then I don't care. Like that's kind of his attitude. And then so like the first time they interacted with him a little bit and got a bit of a kick out of him. The second time they after they went away for a while and came back, then I was like, oh, here's an opportunity to just to have a bit of crack and amuse myself as the DM as well, and hopefully the party. So it was like, oh, you come in, you see Hyan, and he's looking very, very pleased with himself, and he's got a large, very nice, very comfy wingback chair that he's sitting at the bar, not standing, serving, not doing any work, and he's just reading a book. And then like that just went on and on. Then eventually they save to see there's a massive festival. They come into the bar. Hyan's nowhere to be seen, but his fancy chair is there. One of the guys like, "This is my chance," and he like jumps onto the chair, realizes that Hyan has gone under the chair and is curled up into a ball, drunk and asleep. So yeah, I'll do a lot of that, like elaboration on my NPCs, just to make it a bit more fun, have a bit of crack really for myself and the very, because like when you're planning sessions, it can get very like serious and kind of not that intense, but like almost like monotonous sometimes when you're like, okay, I need this person and I need this person, and you're like, okay,
yeah, but you're just kind of rattling off NPCs or the names of businesses in town, or a bunch of like random stuff that, like, realistically, maybe 10% of it comes up.
I used to do a thing, and it was just the worst idea. I don't know why I did it. I thought I was being efficient about it, but I would make a text box on my notes, and it'd be like high end, medium, low end, and then I would prepare one of each for every immunity in the town. So it'd be like blacksmith, high end, medium, low end, high end, medium, low end, potions shops. I think I had 3 or 4 things. I was basically doing like 12 locations with descriptions and 12 NPCs every time I came to a new area. Yeah. And like I think I did it for like 2 weeks before I realized like this is a terrible idea. They're gonna
and like the thing is as well, like I'm semi guilty of that to a degree. I still do not always. I'll typically, at the very least, I'll do a high end and a low end tavern/inn. There's always going to be probably 2 types of inn. You know, you might have a very luxurious and then a middle kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or you might have a middle and a low, or you might have a high and a low, whatever combination. Sometimes I'll do all 3, but I still do that for just taverns/inns. But then I'll only have 1 type of bathhouse. I'll only have 1 blacksmith in town, because the thing about there's a functional reason for that in my game. Because we have a homebrew rule we do for when you sleep, that if you pay for a more luxurious sleep, you get 10 HP in the morning. Mm-hmm. So if you just go, I don't want to spend money, I'm going to sleep in the field outside town, you can do that. You can get a long rest. I'm not going to stop you. You don't get any temp HP. If you sleep in a kind of seedy, kind of run-down tavern, you get 1 times your proficiency modifier in temp HP when you wake up. If you sleep in a place that is kind of an average place, you get 2 times, and if you sleep in a very luxurious, aristocratic place, you get 3 times. Which may not seem like a lot, but that's like if you do that at level 17, you're waking up at 18 temp HP.
Yeah.
At the start of the day, which is a nice, because your proficiency scales up, and you can probably afford more luxurious places. So I still do it there. But I definitely don't do it for like blacksmiths or general stores.
Yeah.
In fact, I even try to see, sometimes it doesn't make sense, right? In a big city, it would make sense that there would be probably someone who specializes in things. Whereas if you go to a small town,
it's probably
it's probably one dude who does everything. He sells all the alchemy stuff. He sells all the weapons. He sells all the other supplies, whatever, So I feel like that's kind of, it's a lot of extra work. So and something I struggle with when it comes to D&D is I need to make things realistic in my head. I need to justify that there's a realistic amount of people living here, that it would make sense why they live in the way they do. The streets are laid out in a realistic manner, and really players don't think about that, but it just drives me crazy. I would know, and that's my own hang up.
That's something I've thankfully avoided. A curse I've thankfully avoided. I go, it's a big town, and people I find will imagine the correct amount of people.
Yeah, I got quite bad now with Temerai, and I started naming streets and everything.
Oh, Conor.
Not all of them.
No.
Not all of them, but like some of the main streets. Like for example, there is one of the main streets is called Promenade.
That makes sense.
And then there's another one that's called Silver Avenue, because it's a long one that goes directly from the Lyceum to the main, pretty much towards the center of town. And the reason it's called Silver Avenue is because people there was a small town on one side of the river, and on the other side of the river was the Lyceum, and the people living in the town who were not at all related to the Lyceum before the town and the Lyceum were one thing, and used to walk along those roads, and they'd set up all their vendors on the sides of those roads, and they'd sell to the students of the Lyceum, and that's how they made all their money, their silver. So there's a historical reason for it, but again, that does nothing for D&D. It does not need to be that way. I'm just really obsessive like that. But one thing you made me think about a second ago. So we were saying, like, certain NPCs like blacksmiths, tavern owners, general store owners don't always need to be expanded on. But that doesn't always mean they can't be either,
Exactly.
And I think it depends on what the story is you're telling. If you're doing a story in a big city, probably the head priest of the cathedral or the temple in town is probably someone who might be involved, and you might want to expand on them. Maybe whoever the lord or lady of the town is, you want to expand on them. If there's a wizard, like a Kosh or something like that, you want to expand on them, or whatever. But you can also do that if you're in a smaller town, like a village or a small town. There might only be one inn, there might only be one blacksmith. That person's a very prominent figure in such a small local community. It did make me think about an idea that would be really cool to take a bit of a spin on the idea of the blacksmith's daughter has been taken by goblins. And
the goblin's daughter has been taken by blacksmiths.
I was gonna say it'd be good if like there was you could take that and you could like expand on it and be like, there's reason behind it, and you can take someone who's meant to be the mundane blacksmith of the town, who's just like, he's got a beard, he's all covered in soot, he's wearing a leather apron. You come in and he's like, he's not working at the forge because he's crying in the corner because his daughter has been taken 2 days ago and no one's willing to go and help. And of course the players, because they're adventurers and it's what they do, will be like, we'll get your daughter back. And then you find out that the reason they took his daughter specifically and no one else in town is because before he was a blacksmith, he was in the army working as a blacksmith, and he actually killed dozens of goblins from their clan. So they're taking their revenge by kidnapping his daughter.
Oh, that kid is dead.
Well, I mean, that could be really, really cool. Like, I'm just saying, like, you can extrapolate on the small people if you want to. But again, I mean, I think the main thing to take away is don't extrapolate on any characters that you don't definitively know are going somewhere or have a plot attached to them, or that your players maybe latch on to, whether predicted or not, because like, again, I could put someone like Kosh, who's an interesting wizard, or at least I think he's an interesting wizard, in front of you guys, and then you guys could go, geez, that tavern owner was very interesting, wasn't he? And I'm like, the tavern owner's name is Jim, and he's just a 34-year-old white male. There is nothing interesting about him.
sorry to any 34-year-old white males that may be listening to this podcast.
Named Jim. Yeah, I apologize.
There's one guy. There's one guy listening to this who's like, oh my god.
Our subscriber count, when we check it now after this podcast goes out, will just drop by 1. That guy's like, well, I don't need this shit. He's just gonna unsubscribe and leave. But yeah, I think like, and then maybe if players latch on to that person, by all means, give them a wacky backstory and make them more interesting. But don't. Because again, as someone who spends a lot of time filling out parts of his world that may never get used, like I did this in the first campaign, I had a kingdom called Pentamere.
Yeah.
When you were in Pentamere, you guys went to, what was it? There was a place called High Crossing, which is a bridge town, which is how you entered the kingdom. And then you traveled over the plains to get to Auxilia, which was the capital. I spent, probably not a very long time, but longer than I should have, mapping out the entire kingdom, right? So if the kingdom is the size of the screen, the box you see me in right now, right? So over here is High Crossing. Here is Auxilia. And I mapped out all this stuff and all down here and everything. You know, I had everything mapped out. Sorry for our audio listeners. But I had all that mapped out, and I had all the towns named, and I had vague ideas of the lore of the town in my head and all that. You literally went to this small town on the border and the capital, and then you went north and never came back to Pentamere again.
You're making me feel guilty now.
Well, no, that's why that's in no way on me. But I went too far, and I'm like, I want to name all the towns and all my kingdoms right now. I did the same for Cordwell as well. And like there was like a couple other forts and other old abandoned towns like in North Cordwell, but you guys only ever went to the 3 coastal cities that were there. I even put like villages in there. I had no reason to, I put them there because I felt like geographically people would settle here. That's not a good reason to include a town, and you know, it's also not a good reason to include an NPC. Like just because you feel like there should be someone in this town who specifically deals with herbalism.
Yeah.
Well, do you already have an alchemist? Just make the alchemist do both. Save yourself the work. Unless you have a really, really interesting idea, or maybe they both hate each other and there's a whole dynamic there and they're constantly bickering. That's fine too. I did that with I put a doctor in Rune. I can't remember his name now.
Yes.
There was a doctor who's like a proper like medical physician. He does surgeries and he stitches people up and all that. But then the local priest he's like he's not quite a cleric. He'd be like someone who has the healer feat, or not the healer, the magic initiate feat, and can cast cure wounds once a day. But the priest and the doctor are constantly at odds with each other because the doctor's like, I can stitch people up all day long, and then the priest is like, oh, that's great, I can heal someone in a heartbeat. And it's like, yeah, you can heal one person in a heartbeat. Good luck with that. And they're constantly fighting with each other. So I mean, if you have something interesting like that, by all means, but save yourself the work. Cut down on NPCs if you can, and don't write a whole swath of information for an NPC that may not even be seen, especially if they're like a blacksmith and your players come to the town on the way to another town. Like, for example, I had a vague idea for the blacksmith in Pontier, but you guys were literally there for a day and a half and then moved on. If I had spent an hour or even a half hour writing out a backstory for this guy, and like, he came from here and he moved here when he was this age, and the reason he left is because of this and blah blah blah, that would be a complete waste. I'd have spent 15 to 20 minutes of my life writing something, when I could have been instead writing up a new encounter for you guys to have on the road, which would actually be more conducive to conducive to the game, you know, and to you guys as players.
Yeah, totally. I think that's a really, really good point. And it is like, so much of DMing is actually like time management and knowing where to actually put your energy properly. And I think NPCs is a place where so many people can get bogged down. And I wouldn't consider myself great at NPCs. I think I've made a couple of decent ones that my players seem to like. But a lot of mine is very, very improv off the cuff. Like, they'll ask me for someone, and I will literally just go, okay, like race, gender, name, age, accent, which actually brings me on to something I kind of wanted to talk about, because I think it's something that can cause a lot of DMs to feel a bit awkward or like insecure or unsure themselves, and it's actually like speaking as an NPC, and whether you do like an accent or a voice. Like, I don't know, like my female NPCs have terrible voices because they're just
the two of us have very deep male voices. So I mean, I purposely, I just talk like myself. I think when I do men, weirdly, even though I am a man, when I do male voices, I go deeper like that.
Yeah.
But like when I'm doing women's voices, I just talk at my normal volume, and maybe a little, very slightly higher. But I don't go like, "Oh, welcome to my tavern. I am." I'm Falula.
Yeah, but some people feel like they have to do that. And it's funny actually. If you ever watch any of the D&D Live games that Chris Perkins ran, or that Jeremy Crawford now runs, they will do that. They will do like a female character. Hello, my name is Linda, or whatever. Like, they'll do that.
Linda.
No, the one I remember most is Jeremy Crawford did Mad Maggie when they did Descent into Avernus.
Yeah.
He's like, hold on, sugar, I'm Mad Maggie. And but I can totally understand why people got it. I got super awkward the first time I had to do an accent when I was DMing, and I had written the damn thing going, I'll do this accent, it'll be class. And then the second my players were like, hello, what's your name? And I was like, it's just
the audio didn't cut out there, folks. Martin was looking confused, as if he didn't have a name prepared.
No, it wasn't even like with that. I would have had a name prepared. It was just like as soon as they went to ask me, it would have been like, oh god, I have to do this accent now.
Now I have to do my half-baked Cockney accent for the rest of my friends.
Why did I say this guy was fucking like Australian?
my Australian, and I apologize for anyone. I don't think we have any Australian / New Zealand listeners.
I don't think we do.
Those two accents are there are very distinct differences, and I can hear the difference in them. When I'm doing one, I constantly stray into the other. I can't help it. My whatever vocal range that's in overlaps too easily for me.
It is,
and I end up
It is very hard sometimes. Like, oh god. I remember because
I can only do New Zealand if I'm doing Korg from Thor.
Who can do Australian and Taika Waititi.
That's basically, I can do Australian and I can do Taika Waititi. I can't do generic New Zealander.
Yeah, but like I think it is just such like I still write them in now, and I think like. Well, I suppose I should probably ask you first. Do you have any tips for like just trying to like get over that awkwardness initially of it? Because like I have some advice, and it's kind of bad advice, because mine is just go for it, just don't care and go for it.
Honestly, that's a lot of what I was going to say as well. I mean, when I started DMing, so when I started DMing, there was you, Tara, Mike, Kevin, and Kieran.
Yes.
You had already played in a game with me. Myself and Tara were dating at the time, so we were kind of comfortable around each other, so that's fine. Mike, I've known for years at that time. We were always very comfortable with each other. I think Kieran and Kevin weren't as comfortable in the roleplay space, but they're light enough that it wouldn't bother them that much. So I think I got very lucky with my first group DMing, you know? And something I noticed is that I as a result of having that group, and then eventually Dan joined in, and we had Aaron as well, and everyone was very comfortable with me talking to them in character. I think a bigger thing for players is talking themselves. But if you're a DM and you're trying to talk in character, I think a lot of it depends on the group you're with. Like I said, I got very lucky. I think a lot of people either I was very close with, or like I said, you and I had played D&D for a while at this point together, so we're totally comfortable doing character voices and stuff like that around one another. That was all fine. Like I said, the other people were all comfortable enough with each other because we're friends at the table, that we were fine when I was fine talking to you guys as an NPC. And then something I noticed like not so years later, I typically run with the same group, but I've done a few one-shots here and there. Something I noticed, that I'm so comfortable with you guys and doing voices around you guys, I don't even think about it when I do it for other people. I'm like, I noticed this only when I did a game for a few friends of mine from secondary school. And like, I don't see them terribly often, even though we live nearby. I don't see them terribly often. Like, these would have been the guys I hung around with every single day in school, like literally every single day. And after school, and we played Xbox together all the time and everything. So, and they have a particular idea, I think, of me in their heads, which is 17-year-old me.
Yeah.
And because we don't see each other as much anymore, I think that it would be weird for a lot of them if I suddenly came out with an accent or a voice, or I was doing a silly character, I think a lot of them were like, what is Conor doing? What the hell is wrong with you? But it wouldn't bother me because I'm just so comfortable doing it. And I think practice, I think that the kind of lessons like Red Hat is practice. I'm so comfortable and do it so often with you guys that I don't even consider that that's a weird thing when I do it around other people, you know?
Yeah. I can't do a Scottish accent. Recently we just decided, like, so we're fudging the expert rules a little bit. My sorcerer has a Raven expert psychic. That she mostly uses for scouting. So, like, experts are supposed to be able to speak at least one language that you can understand. But she really wanted like a Raven psychic, and wanted to kind of be a scouty one. So, like, we were just kind of fudging it a little, and saying that she's got like a Han and Chewie relationship with it, where she can like perfectly understand it, but to everyone else it's like,
yeah.
So like to everyone else it's that. To her it's like, well, love, how's it going? So he's like this, like, it's like, I was like, what accent do you want? It's your crow. What accent? Your Raven rather. What accent you wanted to have? And she was like, Scottish. And I was like, cool. And now we just do a Scottish accent all the time. I'm not good at it. I am not. But I will just go with it, and everyone just accepts it as a thing. Like, it's great.
There was a character in our first campaign who had a dire squirrel companion named Binky. And Binky was a cute squirrel character, and every time he would always be doing the kind of like little like twittery noises and stuff. But then eventually, I think it was Mike or someone got like speak with animals or something like that, and Mike was able to cast it as a blue dragon when he was able to speak to the squirrel. And I went from going like kind of noises to, hey, you blue scale, what's happening? You got any nuts I can have? Because I'm starving over here. Yeah. And like, I wanted to give him the most like polar opposite voice you could imagine a cute little squirrel to have.
You literally turned into like, I'm walking here.
I'm walking here. I'm almost certain I made that joke at some point.
100%.
But one of my favorite voices, and it's not even really a voice, it was also in campaign 1. Tara's monk had at one point decided she wanted a different mount. So I found these stats for War Ostrich, but I reskinned them as chocobos because she's a big Final Fantasy fan. So I made that chocobos are a fairly common mount in the world, and she got one. I think it was pink, and it was specifically because she was playing Final Fantasy 15 at the time, and she named her chocobo, and that she made him pink, and she named him Gee Whiz, and. And I loved playing that character so much because I played him like a dumb bird.
Yeah.
But like, I think I might be misremembering this. Is there a dumb parrot or flamingo or something in the movie Up?
Yeah, I think there is.
Yeah, I kind of played him like that character where he didn't like. No one ever. I think even when Mike cast Speak with Animals, I had him respond as if he was a bird. Like, that's how dumb he was. But like, she'd call out and be like, gee whiz, I need a ride or something like that, and he'd come rushing out of the forest, and I'd just go Rah! And I do this dumb face. That's the only noise he ever made. And there was even one time where like there was like a whole thing where there was a monster on the loose. It turned out to be one of the party's wolves.
Mm-hmm.
But he was on the loose in the valley that you guys have your keep, and he'd killed a few people and stuff like that. And Tara's chocobo was nowhere to be found. And she was like, so help me, if you kill my bird, I'm going to lose it. But I knew he was alive. I would not kill that character because I like making the joke so much. And she went looking for him, and I described him as there was a fallen log. And I described that she was walking through the forest, and she was like, gee whiz. And at one point, his head extended out of the end of the hollow log, and he was just like,
He got stuck in a log.
He was hiding there from the evil wolf that was trying to kill him. It was so funny. That's not really an NPC, but I thoroughly enjoyed playing Gee Whiz. He was just so dumb.
I count that as an NPC. Like I count my Sorcerer's Raven as an NPC. My Wildfire Druid has a cat called Mushu, who is very much got a personality of his own that I would count as an NPC as well. He doesn't speak any languages, but it's again the very like Han and Chewie thing where like Mandrai would be like, Mushu, what are you doing? Like, get up off your arse or something. Like, and then Mushu be like, meow.
And that's kind of like Caleb in World Season 2 or Campaign 2, because he has a fey cat that he summons as a kind of a find familiar spell. Frumpkin, and he speaks to Frumpkin and gives him commands, but Matt never actually, like, Frumpkin has a personality, even though he's not vocal.
Yeah, it's very much inspired by Frumpkin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and he's like, so Caleb will be like, Frumpkin, go in there and scout ahead for us, and he'll go meow. And Matt, that's all Matt has to do, and it's just an acknowledgement, and then he'll go off and do his thing, and he'll occasionally do these different cat noises, like he's kind of speaking. But that's, I mean, honestly, it's a weirdly, how would you describe it? It's a weird thing to be like, here's a character that doesn't actually vocalize in verbal language, but vocalizes in like different caws and pitches and stuff like that, or meows, and then as a result you build a whole like, for example, like you could do a whole cat thing where the cat is like sad and the cat's going meow. But then the cat's excited, he's like meow.
Yeah.
And then or the cat's angry and he's like meow, like that. And like already you could have personality and emotion in a character that never speaks, and it's a cat. But he could that could be one of the most compelling characters, because there's like a weird thing where the less you do, the more the players will fill that out in their head, and they have their own visual of what or who that character is, even though he never vocalizes anything.
Yeah, it's like, I know what word, like when I'm doing that, I would know what words the cat would say if it were to speak words, and I try and convey the message that those words would carry, literally just through inflections on the word meow.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah, exactly.
Like if Mandri's like, Moosh, you come over here, and he doesn't want to do it, he'd be like, meow.
Fun fact, actually, I found this out. In my world, I have a place called Rajang, which is it's very much like feudal China inspired.
Cool.
But it's the home of the tabaxi. And when I was trying to come up with a name for it, I was like, oh, what are various cat related words in Chinese, or like Mandarin, I suppose it would have been. And the word for cat is Mao, M-A-O. And I'm like, okay, at some point in the long history of the country of China, someone was walking down the road, saw a cat, said, "What are you?" And the cat went, "Meow." And he said, "All right."
my favorite word.
That undoubtedly happened.
I don't know the Chinese for it, but I've only seen it as the characters written. But it's like the Chinese word for a penguin. Literally, it's a combination of two other words that mean business and goose.
Business goose.
Because it looks like a suit.
It looks like a suit, yeah.
I love that stuff, man. I love it. But I've a fun question over here. It's like probably a slightly less serious one.
Martin, all your questions are fun.
I know, but not all. Yeah, we'll try that. We'll try that. We'll try a fun question.
Sure, why not?
Yeah. So if you wanted to make, like, we'll say just like an average NPC, not necessarily someone who is plot relevant, but maybe you want, say, like, this is the shopkeeper, this is the blacksmith, this is the arcanist that lives in this place, and you want to give them like a feature that stands out that's going to make them memorable. What kind of things would you add to a character to try and make them memorable, or what kind of features of their character would you kind of mess with or exaggerate to try and get them to be like, oh yeah, this is Frank Frank the arcanist, and he like what kind of stuff do you like to add to those kind of characters, just to try and make them a little more interesting or memorable?
Yeah, that's a very broad question, I will say.
Okay, specifically, let's say you have let's say you have like a blacksmith, and you want to make them different. You want to go against type with this blacksmith. Actually, that's probably why you could make them memorable anyways, to go against type. You want to go against type with this blacksmith. What kind of things what way would you build out this NPC to kind of both still like function as a blacksmith, but maybe subvert some player expectations with
that? Okay. I definitely think I would. I wouldn't make them a dwarf. I feel like, not that you can't, you could totally make a blacksmith dwarf. It's a very interesting character. I just feel that's a bit too much sometimes. It's a bit too on the nose. Like we in the first town you guys went to in this campaign, There was like one or two dwarves in town. The guy named Halvar. He was not the blacksmith in town. He was the carpenter. And like I wanted to not be too obvious and be like, there's a dwarven blacksmith, and an elven alchemist, or like maybe a gnome alchemist or a gnome tinkerer or something like that. I sometimes it's okay. There's absolutely nothing wrong with being like, yes, the dwarf is a blacksmith in town or something like that, or the Fletcher is a wood elf because they like hunting or whatever. There's nothing wrong with that. I just if we're trying to subvert expectations, maybe don't align with those
tropes.
Yeah, those common fantasy tropes. Again, they're not bad. There's absolutely nothing wrong with having a dwarven blacksmith or an elven archer or an elven fletcher for making bows, or I don't know what else. A halfling thief,
dwarf
like the head of the thieves guild is a halfling or something like that. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. I just think that if you're trying to subvert expectation and make things a little less typical, and you can mix this in. If you have a tavern owner, a wizard, a blacksmith, a shopkeep in the town, the blacksmith can be totally be a dwarf. Make the tavern owner a Goliath. Make the wizard a dragonborn. That like try to but so you have some typical, some not, and I think that's the way life is. Because you might have certain ideas about I think life is made up of both like the typical and the not typical, and that's actually the real, statistically speaking, that's how things actually work out. You might think, something's always one way. Well, it's not always one way. Sometimes it's it's a really convoluted way of saying
there's a balance
diversify
there.
Diversify. Feel free to pull on tropes, but also feel free, but like definitely put those tropes beside things that subvert the expectations of the player. So to go back to your example, was it blacksmith?
Yes. So if you want to do an atypical blacksmith, we'll say.
Okay, so I would say definitely not a dwarf. We'll stray away from that. I would say maybe they are... Okay, so a way that kind of plays into the idea of a blacksmith, just off the top of my head, actually this is kind of a bit of insight for you, because this is actually the blacksmith from Pontier.
Oh, okay.
He's a fire Goliath. So in my world, I have types of Goliaths based on the types of giants, rather than just one type of Goliath, which is kind of stone. So he is a fire Goliath. So he's not a dwarf, but it also makes sense that a fire Goliath in this world, fire Goliaths are really good smiths and stuff like that. So it makes sense that he would be. And they have a whole thing where like they revere metalwork and stuff like that. So you might think of a blacksmith having leather overalls and leather gloves and stuff like that, and whatever else on them, possibly goggles or something like this. He does not wear leather because leather is cheap, and leather is basically poor people clothes to fire Goliaths. The way they show their status and the way they show how important or regal they are is they add more and more metal to their outfit, even if it's not functionally armor. It doesn't even have to be armor. They could just have a necklace made up of a bunch of like nuts and bolts or something like that, and the more of it you wear, the more metal you have on your form, the more, and obviously the craft level of that, but they just love, like they will like, so he won't wear a metal, like a leather apron. He'd probably have like a scale mail apron that still protects him from the flames, but it's heavier, but it's made of metal. So for him, that's a big deal because it informs his status as a smith. He's like, I'm not a poor smith who wears leather or the skin of an animal, please. I harvested this from a mountain and I cast it in fire and I wear it on my body. It's a whole thing. So sorry, I'm a bit off topic.
No, I like that.
But yeah, so I would definitely I made him a fire Goliath. And you might think of a Goliath being particularly maybe brutish or mean or something like that. Again, I try to subvert, and I would be like, no, he's actually like they're very passionate people. He's incredibly jovial and nice. He's a super nice dude. It's very friendly. He's not like a gruff blacksmith, because again, that's a bit of a trope. He's like a super nice dude that'd be like, no, come on, welcome, come to my shop, please. What do you need? Anything you want. I have shields, I have armor, I have weapons. He's absolutely delighted to be around people and involved with people. Whereas again, you might think of the blacksmith as being big and bearded and kind of an old guy, and he's like,
Yeah.
I just make swords for the village. And again, nothing wrong with that, but you can subvert that by kind of playing against type, as it were. You think as Goliath as being maybe savage or a bit like stoic or something like that. Have them be super jovial and super like outstandingly friendly. You think of dwarves as being the typical blacksmiths. Have a different race be the blacksmith. Have an elf be the blacksmith, because I mean, like, it's weird that elves are not blacksmiths more often when you consider that in Tolkien, which is where a lot of D&D stuff comes from. Elves are phenomenal metal workers and blacksmiths. Like they've made some of the best swords in the world. Like, you know, Glamdring and Orcrist, which are from The Hobbit.
Yeah, their swords of the first age made by elves.
Yeah, they're made by the ancient elves, like, and they're some of the single best swords in the world. They're master crafted swords, but people still think of dwarves as being the blacksmiths and the crafters. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is just they've I think in traditional fantasy media as well, just dwarves have a really strong association with like metalworking and stoneworking and that kind of stuff.
Mining and building mountain walls and all that.
Exactly. Yeah. Again, Tolkien, and like you're saying, there's like so much of D&D comes from Tolkien, to the point where Tolkien sued D&D.
Yeah.
That's why we have halflings, and why we don't have balrogs anymore.
We have, what are they called now?
Ballers.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. I always enjoy making like I said, like DMing can sometimes get a little bit like a bit of a chore, especially when you've a lot to get through and you've been working for a while. Like if you've already written for like an hour, and then you know you've probably got like another hour ahead of you, and then you'll just have to give it all a read over to make sure you didn't write complete gibberish. That's probably like another hour and a half's worth of work ahead of you. Sometimes you can just feel a bit like, oh god, I've got to work through this now. It's only brief, but yeah, you can get it sometimes. And I think like that's where the weird NPC is born, is where your DM is like, either fuck it, it'll be grand, his name's Sprinkle, or I'm bored and I have to make an NPC, so I'm going to entertain myself while I make this NPC.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Just to get a little bit off topic with that, when it comes to planning sessions and writing for a couple hours or multiple hours at a time to plan like a huge swath of information for your world, my problem is I get bogged down in the nitty gritty. I could just describe, like, I could be like, all right, there's a corridor, there's a pit trap halfway down the corridor, this is the DC, in the next corridor there's a room after that, you know, and ideally that's what I should do, and like I would easily be able to fill that in the moment. What I end up doing is, the players can see a corridor with smooth stone walls. They've got engravings of elvish writings on the walls here. There's a pit trap here. The pit trap has this DC and this damage. The corridor is exactly 50 feet long, and I get way too bogged down. I'm like, I don't need half that information.
I think, do you know what? We can probably save. We can go into a bit more depth, because I think an episode on like preparing a session would probably be a good idea. But like I was laughing because yesterday I wrote an absolute ton for my session yesterday, because I was doing a big lore dump. I think like I did word count at the end. It was like 2,500 words and like 5 pages. But like you can see, like, when it starts off, it's all big chunks of prose, and then by the time I get to page 5, it's like the title of the thing I'm writing about, and then it's all just bullet points with like 2 lines, because I got so tired of writing like massive chunks. So
I deal almost exclusively in bullet points now. Because it's also way easier to reference if you're in the middle of a session, like, you know.
Yeah, I get that. I still, if there's like a big scene setting description, I will write that whole thing out and almost verbatim read it out. I'll often improvise over it. But yeah. No, that's cool.
I think we've mentioned that before. Improv is your best friend. Improv will fill in the gaps that if you bullet point it, improv will allow you to read it out as if it were a well-crafted paragraph of text. Right? Yeah.
So this is where I think I can speak up a little bit about NPC creation. One of my current favorite NPCs is he is a I may have fallen into the trope because I needed an answer quick. He's a halfling artificer. Called
I would say gnomes are more a part of that trope.
No, sorry, I think he is a gnome.
Okay, so then yes, that is the trope.
his name is Alston Bodyknock. Which, if you
gnome names are so stupid.
Yeah, but if you happen to look at the first suggestions for both gnome first names and gnome surnames,
Oh, is that literally the first and last name? The first two to come up.
I think it might be. I think I had the race names open so I could scroll quickly through, and I think the first. I think it might be like Gnome first name Alston, Noel second name Bodyknock.
1 sec down. This is Gnome.
Yeah, he's a gnome artificer. Because one of my players wanted to enchant some bullets. Is it Alston Bodyknock?
Well, no. Apparently you've taken two first names, but yeah, pretty much.
Oh, that's grand.
It's Alston is the first name, and then Alvin comes next, but then Bodyknock is the third male name. I've actually the first name Bodyknock. Hi, I'm Bodyknock.
It sounds like much a better name. But yeah, he was one, and then like my players. When my players like, I can I go and look for like an artificer? I want to commission like magic bullets because I've these monster bits. And I was like, yeah, no bother. And like, there's the area they're in has this massive market called like the Star Market, and it's got all these different streets going off of like spokes of a wheel. And there's like, this is where the alchemists are. This is where the blacksmiths are. This is where the carpenters are. And then this is where this is where you need to go if you want to talk to like someone about magic books, items, potions, that kind of thing. And they went there and they were like, okay. I was like, yeah, this guy. And I was like, right, Alston Bodyknock. And then they were like, I was like, hello, excuse me there. And I was like, oh crap, I didn't come up with a name. And I said, hello! And I don't know why Bosco came to my head when it was asked. But like, he now talks like this. And it kind of calms down a little bit now to kind of a little bit more like that now. A little bit more of a kind of an old man talking now. Like, that's a fine bit of a story now. And it literally went from that. Now he's evolved to that. But that was just literally like, crap, I need a name. And like, yeah, sometimes you do just gotta rely on the tropes. Like if you're planning one out in advance, I'd say you have the time to try and avoid it. But sometimes if someone goes, I want to talk to a blacksmith, and you're like, all right, Sonny, what can I do?
Yeah.
It just happens. But I think as long as you're still able to have fun with them, and you know that if you do want to change that, you can come back to that at a later point and embellish and update and add. Because if they've only met them once and you change the accent, you can either just straight up say it to your players, or you can just go with a new accent, and there's like a 40-60 chance they probably won't realize.
Oh yeah, there's loads of times where like I've completely forgotten, particularly the accents. That's one thing. I can write down a name, a race, an occupation, a description of the character. I find it hard to document what the accent is, because I'm not going to say I do a lot of accents, because I don't. I have a handful I do, but I have kind of variations on them, or I'll do the pitch differently. So I'll just do a typical British, and then I'll do either, if I do it high, maybe that's an elf. If I do it kind of low, maybe it's a human city guard or something, And like, I can kind of go back and forth. But the problem is that they kind of overlap, and they're somewhat similar to one another, to the point where like, if I just write British into the voice description on the table I have for the character, I'm like, that means nothing. I can do like 4 different British voices and they are very different characters and personalities. So it's I find it hard to document. If we don't deal with people on the regular, like characters, I will almost certainly forget what they sound like or how they kind of carry themselves.
No.
I should probably like I would like to find a way around that, like record myself doing a few lines as that character, and then be able, if I know you're going to that town, I'll just do a quick revision and listen to myself do it. So I'm like, I know what that character sounds like. But the problem is,
I think you're falling into the trap of giving yourself a lot of work to do.
That's a lot of work. Even just to record like a quick voice memo where I do a voice and I just put the name of the character on it. That's a lot of work. For character, that's a lot of work. Sometimes I just flat out I give up and just do my own voice.
Yeah. There's been one or two times you've been like, no, fuck, I'm just going to speak like me. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I've done a lot more recently because we're doing it over Hangouts. And I feel like sometimes when I do accents, they don't translate through the microphone very well. So
audio in general can be tough.
Yeah. If it's in person, I typically do the accent. For the most part, unless I'm bombing the accent hard, and then I'm like, fuck it, he talks like this now.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm a dwarf.
My name's Jeff. Deal with it. Do you have like a favorite NPC from anything?
Yes.
Okay, hang on. So we'll do a 2-stage question. Okay.
Okay.
So first one, in general, like not necessarily from something you've made. Do you have a favorite NPC, either video game, D&D, like Just
Oh,
pick one and tell me why you liked them and what stands out about them.
okay.
Because I have one
There's
and
a
it's
lot.
obvious.
There's a lot. For a lot of different reasons, I have a lot of different NPCs I love. There's a guy. Okay, this is not my favorite. I'm gonna give you a few, but there's one that comes to mind that I think is so fucking funny.
We'll do the highlights.
All right. So there's one guy. I'm not gonna remember his name. And I just think he's got some cool quest lines, and I think he's just interesting as a character. His name is where is it? Here it is. Nick Valentine, and he's a follower you can get in Fallout 4.
Okay.
And he was a detective from before the war whose mind was transferred into an android, but he talks like a 50s noir detective.
Oh, he's like a gumshoe. I love it.
Yeah, it's really cool. I just love he's great. He's actually a good companion to have on you, but he's cool to talk to, and he has his own personal quest, which is really interesting and stuff like that. Where you find all these old audio tapes about him being a bit of a renegade cop when he back in the day and stuff like that. It's really cool. So that's one that jumps to mind. I love. There's a character I love, like Garrus Vakarian in Mass Effect. He's just a badass.
He's the big buff alien dude, isn't he?
With the kind of swick-back spikes on his head. He is amazing. In the first game you meet him, I'm realizing a trend because he was technically a police officer in the first game. In the first game, he was a police officer working for Citadel Security, and then he joins you because he's basically sick of all the bureaucratic shit you need to do as a police officer. But he joins you because you're a Spectre and you're above the law. As long as you are doing what is right for people, and trying to set things right, you're allowed to break laws and do pretty much whatever you want. And that's why he joins your team. And then in the second game, you meet him, and he's gone off on his own and started his own group of vigilantes that strike back against all these like crime bosses and stuff. It's really, really badass. So he's great. There's one guy. Again, there's a bunch. There's an absolute bunch of NPCs. Some are silly and funny NPCs. Some are like, I just think are really interesting or very like badass characters to be around. Like I said, Garrus has some great moments and some great lines. And he's he's probably the most badass guy in all those games. Sorry to all the Rex fans out there. But there's one character that jumped to mind immediately. He's a very silly character, and it's a really dumb encounter, but it shows up in all 3 Mass Effect games, right?
Okay.
And it's so fucking funny. So the very first game, right, your character is named as a Spectre. And he's the first human Spectre, so it's a big deal in the galactic community. And a guy named Conrad Vernon, I want to say it's Conrad Vernon, meets you midway through the game, maybe. I think after a certain mission is done, it'll trigger a thing where he'll appear at a certain point on the Citadel. It's like, no, I'll make sure his name is right. Is it Conrad Vernon? And he is... Nope. That's actually apparently a name of a voice actor.
Oh.
It's Werner. Sorry, Conrad Werner. Yeah. So, he is... In the first game you meet him, and he is basically some dude, and he heard you're the first human Spectre, and he's like, oh, Commander Shepard, can I get a picture with you? And like he shows up at 3 separate points in the first game, and he's like, I heard you're the first human Spectre, that's really, really cool. Like, he's not like a young kid or anything, he's about Shepard's age. He's like, and Shepard's like in his 30s or 40s, so it's not like you're a kid and fanning out, he's kind of nerding out. He's like, in Iron Man 3, the guy that Tony Stark meets in the back of the TV van.
Yes.
And he takes off his hat and he has his hair and his beard cut the exact same. He's a little bit like that. So you meet him and he's like, oh, I'm your biggest fan. And you get the option to be polite or rude or whatever. And you meet him a couple times. The first time he asks for a picture, the second time he asks for your autograph, and this is the third time he asks for something else. So you meet him a few times and you have the option at the very last conversation, if your persuasion I think is high enough, you can have an honest conversation with him, and you can be like, look, Conrad, I get that you're a really big fan, but really I'm out here trying to do my job, I'm not looking to be praised by anybody, and if you really feel like what I'm doing is important, maybe you should get out there and do that kind of stuff yourself. Or you can also be like, man, get a fucking grip, I'm not important, this bullshit isn't important, try to do something with your life, depending whether you want to go renegade or paragon. and he'll either way he'll be like, "You're right, Commander Shepard. I should be giving back more myself. I should lead you. I should follow your example." So you meet him in the second game, and he's on. I want to say you meet him on Citadel Station, or not Citadel. Different place. It's like a criminal place, and he's going there, and he made his own armor that's like a shitty version of yours from the first game.
No.
And he's like, no, because you said I need to get out there and make a difference, so I'm following your lead. And it says N7, which is like his military designation, but again, it's crudely drawn and stuff, and it's all badly painted. And you can be like, Conrad, this is not what I fucking meant. And you get to tell him, like, you're working with an organization called Cerberus, and they're kind of a little bit morally gray in terms of what they do. But you're working for them in the second game, and you tell him, look, I'm working for Cerberus now. I'm not working for the Alliance anymore. And then he's like, oh, I'm sorry, Commander Shepard. I just wanted to do right by you. And it's like, you're like, it's fine. Don't worry about it. So you meet him in the third game. And in the third game, he's like, yeah, I signed up with Cerberus just like you did. But the thing is, Cerberus are flat out bad guys in the third game. He's always 1 degree behind you. It's so funny. Like when you meet him in the third game, you're literally like, Conrad, Cerberus are murdering. They're terrorists. They're murdering people in different places around the galaxy. And he's like, what? Oh no, I've been handing out flyers all day. It's so funny. He's such a bad character. Like, it's such a great bad character, but he's always 1 degree behind what he should be doing.
Yeah.
And I think he's a hilarious character. Jumps to mind in video games for me anyway.
I've got like 2 from video games that I think are just absolutely phenomenal. One is entirely just because it makes me laugh every time, and the other one is actually a really good NPC. The one that makes me laugh every time. Have you played any of the more recent Ratchet and Clank games?
Not the more recent ones, I don't think. So no. I played the original trilogy plus Gladiator.
I'm not sure if it was in the original trilogy or not, but do you remember there was a weapon called Mr. Zircon?
No.
Okay, this is great.
What did it do?
It was like this drone that you would just release, right? And it had like a big kind of like humanoid android face on it, and then it was like a kind of a pointed cone shaped on the back and a few rings on it, and he'd like an antenna on his head. Okay. You would let him go and you could shoot other weapons while he was going, but he would just stand beside him and be like, you have summoned Mr. Zircon, and then like you would like walk through and be like, Zircon is scanning for enemies, and then like you get to an area with enemies and he's like, Mr. Zircon will eliminate you, and then like he just goes around and he just constantly spouts like 80s Russian bad guy dialogue but with a robot tone, and he's yours. And then like I only saw it in the release gameplay for the most recent Ratchet and Clank where you're going to a different dimension.
Yeah.
And he goes to a different dimension and he finds Mrs. Zircon, who is this huge, like full size, like taller than the person, like female robot. And like he comes up there and he's like, I'm trying to buy guns, because he's on a different on a planet. He's like, oh, are you part of that rebellion too? And he's like, sure. No, he's like, no, I'm not a different planet. He's like, oh, I understand. I'm new to this out here, espionage. And it's just such a great thing, because he just went from this like completely humorless and dry killbot that wasn't aware of how hilarious he was to like this fully fleshed out character. And then my actual good answer is Atreyu from God of War.
Atreyu's that's a kid.
The kid Atreyu. You can only really control him like to shoot. You can like get him to shoot arrows and stuff, but he's not really your character. Like.
No, he's definitely an NPC. Yeah, 100%.
And I think he's one of the most realistically written, best, most useful NPCs in all of gaming.
I think
because you do the whole thing.
He's got some really. Oh yeah, I've done start to finish. He's got some really interesting development as a character, particularly when Kratos comes clean to the fact that he's like the son of a god, and that means you're also the son of a god.
And he turns into the biggest little shit ever.
Yeah, but you kind of understand why he's having this crisis of he's like he literally, I think at one point he's like completely shit to one of the dwarves.
Yeah, he's like, you're small people with small problems, why are you bothering me, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then the dwarf is like, what did I do? And then he's just like, we can do whatever we want, we're gods. And Kratos had to kind of rein him in a little bit. But yeah, he was. I loved his character.
Phenomenally well written character, and incredibly well acted too. Those would be like my 2 like outside of D&D picks. One is just Trolley because I love Mr. Zircon, and after seeing
I could probably do this I'm not gonna lie. I could probably list characters or NPCs from video games that I absolutely love all day, every day. To talk about Ratchet and Clank again, Captain Quark.
Oh,
Is
Captain
amazing.
Quark is amazing. How did I not think of Captain Quark? He's phenomenal.
Biggest himbo in the galaxy.
Such a Zach Brannigan.
He is. I was trying to think of it. Yes. Oh, almost lost my mic. On my headphones. Yeah. No. Absolutely. He's a total. Actually, he's a total Zach Brannigan character where he's so fucking dumb, but he somehow still manages to be the hero. Where he like every single time. Right. It's so funny. Ratchet and Clank is full of wild and wacky NPCs, as is the Jack and Daxter games as well. They have some utterly hilarious characters
There's
in them as well.
another NPC that's just great is the weapon stealer from Resi 4. What you buying?
Yeah.
What you selling? Oh god! And did you see? There's in Resi 8. Then there's a new weapon stealer, and he's this big, quite hefty dude, quite chubby, and
He's called the Duke.
the Duke, yeah, the Duke.
Yeah.
But he has a
I was
line.
watching some gameplay.
There's a line of dialogue where if you just spend a bit of time in the menu, he'll be like, as my good friend would say, what are you buying?
Yeah, because didn't 4 take place in Spain as well?
Yeah, 4 is in Spain. Yeah,
Is this one in Spain?
I think it's Romania.
Oh, Romania. Oh, okay, fair enough.
The big boss's
Europe,
name is Lady Dimitrescu. And so I think it's like Eastern European, Romanian
okay.
vampires and werewolves, you know.
That's I could talk all day about various characters from games that I think, again, either because I think they're just somehow just interesting. Like with Mass Effect, the original trilogy of Mass Effect has some of the single best characters and character development in any game ever. Like they're amazingly written. Again, you can do simpler ones, sillier ones, like you have in like Skyrim, and Fallout has a lot of silly characters in it.
Hades has some absolutely phenomenal NPCs in it.
Which is
Hades.
Oh yeah, I've heard.
Oh,
Yeah,
so good.
You meet all the various gods, the Greek gods, don't you?
Yeah, you're fighting your way out of hell, and you're the son of Hades. And as you break your way out of not hell, as you break your way out of the underworld, you can come across the various different Olympian gods who will give you boons to help you fight your way out. It's a lot of fun. Do you have a favorite D&D NPC? Either one you've created or someone else has.
Oh,
when I mentioned it earlier, you were like, "I have a favorite NPC." Was that Gareth?
Oh no. Oh wait, Gareth?
Gareth.
Oh, Gareth. Oh no, sorry. When you were saying NPC, I was thinking of D&D earlier.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah.
So the one I thought of was one I made. But I'm trying to think, is there any ones that I've played with in other games so I found particularly?
So you know what, this is meant to be like a DM a focus on you specifically. So we'll just go with the one that you made. What's your favorite NPC that you've made?
Mr. Milo Cogsby.
I had a feeling Milo might make an appearance.
Yeah, Milo is a character I came up with very early on in my DM, maybe like session 4 or 5 of my DMing career, where he is a I want to say he's a stone. Oh, so rock gnome. He's a rock gnome artificer. He was an artificer before artificers were a thing in D&D.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least in this edition, at least in 5e. I had to get some like homebrew stuff on the Unearthed Arcana wiki, or not wiki, but Reddit. So yeah, he's very typical in that sense. He is a gnome artificer, very typical in that sense. But I give him this like high pitched kind of American voice, and when I first introduced him in the first campaign, he was terrified of like speaking with a girl. Like if a girl, I don't know if a girl talks to me, I don't know if I can talk back. It's really it's really nerve wracking.
Nervous is the like, if I think of Milo, the first thing that comes to mind is like nervous or anxious, and and this motion just like.
Oh, he's always playing with his hands, because he's so anxious.
He's Morty. That's who he is. Oh my god, he's Morty.
Oh wow, yeah.
Like,
again, also. He was a character before Morty was a.
It's such that character. It's like, oh jeez, oh god.
Jeez, I don't know, guys.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love playing him. I'll do a lot of my various voices from multiple people. Only Milo has that voice. I only do that voice for Milo and nobody else. He is one that's probably the closest to my heart. He was in the first campaign. You guys met him very early on. What happened? I think
he was attacked by
somewhere.
So we went to find him to get some stuff made, I think, or to try and talk to the Sky Sentinels, or
Sky Wardens.
Sky Wardens. Sorry, the Sky Wardens. And we rescued him from like 2 dinosaurs that were trying to eat him.
Well, it was a few raptors and some tribal humans that were riding those raptors were attacking him. And he was like, he had a single pistol, and he was like, bang, and had to reload it, and he went, bang, had to reload it. And you guys came in and helped him. And then you guys, there was a bunch of other stuff. He showed up a few times throughout the campaign. He gave you lifts on his airship places.
Yeah.
He I think he might have crafted a couple of magic items for you.
I think
he did a whole time travel thing with him, which I really, really loved because I got to play with the character a bit. So in the present day, he's quite young as a gnome. So he's really nervous and he's kind of skittish and all that. And I did a time travel thing where you guys went through a portal, a time travel portal ring thing, like a Stargate.
Yeah. I think we talked about this on a previous episode, actually.
Oh, did we?
Not specifically this thing, but like the time travel thing. So
oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's really, time travel's really difficult to write about. So you guys were flung like hundreds of years into the future. And Milo was like at this site where the portal was. He sent you down to have a look. You got flung into the future by accident, and then he was in the future waiting for you, but he was much older and he was way more confident. And he went from being the skittish little nerdy guy to being kind of the commander of the resistance because you guys have been transported to the future. You weren't there to stop the big bad. As a result, the big bad was essentially he had all but taken over the entire world. And Milo was like, no, look, you're here now. I knew that you would arrive at this date because I did the calculations or whatever. I knew you'd arrive this date. I've been preparing to send you back as soon as possible. There's another window within a few hours from now. If I put you back into the portal at that time, it'll send you back the way you came and you'll arrive 5 minutes after you left. And he's like, but I can't tell you anything about the future and all this because it'll mess up the timeline. But again, he got to be such a badass because you guys were in the future. Mm-hmm. The bad guy was able to detect you now. You've just been gone from existence for those few hundred years. Because you showed up in the future, the bad guy was able to detect the MacGuffin magic items that you had. And he immediately began attacking the ship. And Milo's like, don't worry about us. If you go back in time and sort this out, none of this will ever happen. So he got you to the room with the ring, and he's like, that'll activate in a few seconds. Jump through it. I'll hold them off. And he got to do a full Iron Man artificer thing where he flicked down this mask and a helmet, and he like slapped he slapped this panel on his chest, and it full on like
the briefcase Iron Man suit.
In Iron Man 2, the briefcase thing. It full on like turned into an Iron Man suit, and he got to hold the line while you guys escaped back to the past, or back to the present, I should say, in order to resolve things. And he has such a great arc, and I love playing him, and he's just a fantastic character. And as a result, I put him in the second campaign, even though it's an entirely different world. I don't care. If you ever play the Final Fantasy games, there's always a Cid in all the Final Fantasies. There's always a Milo. No matter what world I make, there will always be a Milo. I'm saying that now.
I like it a lot.
Milo Cogsby.
Indeed. Milo Cogsby, Artificer Extraordinaire.
He's making a bunch of magic items for you guys at the moment.
Yes,
in Temerai.
He's going to make me some really cool stuff that's going to let me throw lightning bolts, and I cannot wait. I need to fulfill that Zeus fantasy. Do you know, if I had to pick one like that I've created, God, it's hard because there's a lot of them that I kind of just like one off and just kind of fling away. But one that the guys have come back to a few times is like Professor. It's a wood elf professor, a female wood elf professor she's like the headmistress of the biggest mage college in the world. And my players have kind of done a few missions for her, encountered her through various things, and she's just a fun character to play because she's very much like this. Always the smart. I play her as like always the smartest person in the room, and like she's so powerful. Like she's like I've like in my head she's not like 9th level spellcaster, but like she's easily like 6th, 7th, 8th level spellcaster which is really strong for an NPC. And like So like anytime she comes up, she doesn't normally like interfere directly, but she will like ferry people. Like there was a moment where like they were having a big battle and like everything was coming at them, and it was like, oh god, we might not hold out. And then like an airship flies over the city, drops this like paladin NPC I had, and then like there's a poof of light and like this like from a portal, this other NPC walked out, and the two of them joined the fight, and like she's just a lot of fun to play.
On your left.
Yeah, very. It was very Portals, yeah. But she's a lot of fun to play because it's just fun being like, yeah, I'm the smartest person in this room and I have the most authority and you can't really do shit to me, so I'm not even gonna really bother listening to your conversation. Bye bye, I'll see you later. And then just the portal appears and she's gone. She's very much that kind of, hey, I'm doing a thing, nice to see you and all. Not really your friends, but you know, like I'm fond of you, I guess. You entertain me. And then like boom, a portal and she's gone. And like that's just a lot of fun. Just she's like, oh, I don't know. Gambit and Rogue put together in one person, but they're a wizard. She's a lot of fun to play like that. I suppose if I had like one that just makes me laugh then is Hyan, because like not every time, but now like I leave like if they're in that city and they're like and they're staying there, like I'll leave like a couple of days staying there, go past, and like I'll add a new wrinkle to Hyan. He started off with just being like he was just lazy, didn't really respond to them when they asked him stuff because he was reading a book. The next time they came in, he had a really nice chair to read his book in. The next time they came in, he was asleep under the chair, very very protective of the chair. The next time they came in, there was a change. Then he had like commissioned this fancy like magical dining table from like the artificers, and it's basically like it's like a box. And you set it down, you press the button.
I want there to be and this is potentially spoilers, so if your players are listening, turn off the podcast now. I'm going to give you a good hook for this one, Martin.
Okay.
All right. Hyan is being possessed by that first chair, who is a king mimic, and he's having them requisition more mimic furniture so that this tavern can eventually just be full of mimic furniture. And Hyan is like the duped mind control individual who's obsessed with them.
I have something so much more evil planned, and it's going to be great.
More evil than mimics? Oh. That's not possible.
I've told you about this before, and yeah, you were like, "That's evil."
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay. Tell me afterwards.
Of course. But yeah. The magic table. So just the magic table because it made me laugh. So it's like they press the button, the table like folds out Iron Man style out, and then it just magically produces like food. But when you eat it, it like tastes exactly like your favorite thing, and like
okay.
So same with whatever. Like it's just like the drink just looks like a glass of water, but when you drink it, it tastes exactly like whatever your favorite drink is. That kind of thing. And like so they do it. It worked out fine. There's a big festival the following day, and the thing they come back in. They come back in the following day to have breakfast, and they're like, "Oh, where's Hyan? Hyan's missing." And then they look around, they look under the chair. He's not in the chair. They find the table upside down in one corner, and all the food and drink that were on it are just like trashed and spilled all over. They right the table and find Hyan sleeping under the upturned table, covered in food and drink, and just wakes up and goes, "Oh, suppose you want a drink or something, right?" Yeah.
How does he keep finding himself under furniture, waking up underneath furniture?
He runs a very fun establishment.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Martin.
Yes, Conor. On
that note, that's all the time we have for today.
Hey, that was a good one. That was quite possibly the longest dialogue tree for ever. You know, doing NPCs and all. But no, that's a blast. NPCs are like I've always like not struggled with NPCs, but I've always felt like a little weird or like insecure with my NPCs because I do just improv. I'll write them down afterwards and then they get added to, but like the improv thing I've always been a little shaky about, so it was fun to kind of like pick your brain on that kind of thing. Particularly she's talking about going into doing like voice notes to yourself doing the accent
I will not end up doing that because it's way more work than I want to put into it, but it's just I don't understand. I don't have a better system. If anyone listening has a better system as to how I can document the voices that I do for my various characters, please let me know. I would love their assistance.
I think that'd be tricky without just doing a million voice notes, alright. But anyway, Conor, that'll be in the show. Where can people find you on the internet?
People can find me on the internet mostly on Twitter at 0.Conor, ZEROPOINTCONOR, 1N, very important. or they can find me here every Friday at 6 p.m. Irish time on the Micflayers podcast on YouTube and Spotify.
Hey, that's what we like to hear. And we got so close with the one end this time. So close. I was watching. We were so close. It was like a microsecond. We will get this one day. One day. One day we will beat the video delay. As for myself, just like Conor, you can find me mostly here on the Micflayers podcast, but I'm also on Twitter a lot for my sins at So Sorry It's Over, which is boom right down there in the right hand corner. You can find both of us on the Micflayers Twitter account, which is also in the furthest right hand corner of the screen there at Micflayers Pod. And yeah, you can also find us on YouTube and Spotify for your listening/viewing pleasure. Conor, any last words to the fine people that are listening to us today?
No.
No was a fantastic sign off. So that would be
genuinely blanking there.
That's fine. So that'll be a no from Conor and a goodbye from me.
Oh, goodbye is also probably appropriate. Yes, goodbye everybody. Goodbye, folks.
Goodbye everyone, and we'll see you next week on this very professional podcast for a new episode, 6 p.m. Irish time as usual. Bye bye and no.